is Carolyn Biondi. For me, it's a pleasure and an honor. I am beyond grateful. Carolyn is an individual that I've had the distinct pleasure of working with, collaborating with over the last 4 to 5 weeks, and we came, in contact with each other through a family member. And Carolyn is somebody who is aligned to the same things that I am, obviously living a life filled with purpose. We also suffer from the same disease, but what you'll see here is in our dialogue, in our conversation, you'll see a completely different way of self-identification with the disease. She is somebody who is, traveled the academic route. And so I love that about you. Again, we talk about constant and never ending alignment. I'm exactly the same way. I shared with her that I don't have enough space on this paper to include all of the acronyms after her name. But I'll give you all a very macro perspective of how well qualified she is. She got a bachelor's degree in psychology from Dartmouth. She has a master's degree in social work from the University of Chicago, which is one of my favorite institutions. She also, because one master's is not enough, she went back to school and she recently graduated with a master's in applied positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. She was most recently the executive director of Arm in Arm, and we'll get into this, which essentially is a not-for-profit that provided resources to marginalized families and communities. And so I am so grateful, so happy, honored to have you as the first guest of the Altered State podcast. And so with that, a sincere thank you for your time, your consideration, and everything that we've shared over the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Well, Tony, it is an honor to be here today. It's an honor to be your first guest. And really, I'm honored that you asked me today to have a conversation with you in a way that I've never really publicly had a conversation about my experience. So I'm excited about what we're going to talk about.
Excellent. We're just going to get into it. I think it's important just to kind of dive in head first. Yeah. I think that's just the way I approach life, right? When you're kind of moving in a direction, it's important just to kind of figure out if you're going the right way. And then if, you obviously, I think we'll build the cadence and the questions will build on one another as we evolve. You're obviously somebody who is, just recently graduated from UPenn with a master's degree. Talk to me about the application, the applicability of what you've learned with your most recent study, and kind of share with me a day in the life of Carolyn Biondi.
Well, sure. So this is all really new for me. I transitioned out of my job last October that you had so nicely given in my introduction. I was executive director of a nonprofit. And so my life has changed pretty dramatically after doing that for almost 9 years. I'm now, I've started my own wellness practice, and I'm helping bring wellness, the things that I've learned about wellness and thriving, to other people, either individuals or groups. And so a day in the life is really my own self-care practices. I start my day. I can give you some details around that. I try to start that very deliberately every day, and then I move into my work day which is really consisting of designing curriculum right now. So figuring out how I want to teach what I've learned. And then also I've already got some clients going, so I'm doing group work and individual sessions.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So when Carolyn puts her feet on the floor in the morning, you look at, how you're going to approach your day.
Yeah.
What's the protocol for you?
So this is really fun because I've developed more of a ritual and a routine of late. I had been building something slowly by myself, but I recently did a course on Insight Timer, which is an app that you may have heard of. It's got meditations and all kinds of good stuff for those looking for well-being. And there's a course on manifestation of goals and dreams by a teacher named Kenneth Soares, and he has a very specific way that he recommends starting your day, and so I've adopted that. And what you first do is smile when you wake up. So you spend some time smiling, and it's good to actually, the physical act of smiling can just instigate all these positive feelings in your body. It can kind of trick your body into feeling good. And I think it also, in the morning when you've been asleep, it starts to kind of, get out the kinks in your face. So you smile, and then I go into a stretching routine and wake up my body. And I just have found, as I've in my journey recovering from alcohol addiction and becoming sober, I have found that stretching my body and moving the energy around my body is an incredibly important daily practice. And so starting my day by stretching and releasing tension that I've built up just by being asleep is it's a really important practice for me. And next I go into my gratitudes. So I have a gratitude journal, and my gratitudes, it just has to start with I am grateful. And whatever I'm feeling that day, whatever I'm thinking about, if I'm in a negative place, it could be I'm grateful that I have that I can tolerate the negative feelings that I have right now. I think for recovering addicts, finding ways to deal with our feelings is really important. So I might just say, I'm grateful that I know that I have the strength to tolerate the feelings that I'm having. But I also try to recall positive things going on in my life, something that might have happened the day before or something that I'm looking forward to during the day. So my gratitude practice is really important.
It's funny, like for me, the undercurrent to like how I stay positive is really being anchored to gratitude.
Yeah.
And I often tell, the people that I work with, whether it's a fellow member of the fellowship or somebody who's asking me for just guidance, right? When I was in treatment, I literally built a plan that allowed me to kind of structure my day, because I think I have a strong sense of willpower, but guess what? Willpower does not allow you to shun the disease, right? You have to build, it's the practice of habit. Right?
Yes.
For me, this whole gratitude component is so critical
Yes.
to maintaining the balance
Mm-hmm.
of, hey, not every day is going to be an A+ day. We know
Mm-hmm.
that. But if you're anchored to gratitude, and if you can say, hey, hold on one second, am I 1% better than my worst day? And if I am, I'm doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
To me, fuels the gratitude. So I love that
Absolutely.
you're doing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, I picked up the routine from this course that I got so much out of on Insight Timer, but the research is there in what I was learning in positive psychology. The research about practicing gratitude is very powerful. That it actually it can ignite all these positive feelings within us. It can help us to kind of shed a negative mindset, and when we're feeling better, we're functioning better. So it has a very, it's a catalyst.
How important is journaling for you?
So journaling is very important. Right now, my daily practice is just gratitudes, and I might write down, also some affirmations about what I'm moving into, what I'm envisioning for my life. I might write about just, jot down my intentions for the day in my journal. But while I was going through therapy, which was, the journey of getting sober for me, I was in therapy for a pretty intensive therapy for over a year. I was writing in my journal just, free form about any memory that came up. And I found it to be an incredibly important process to getting to the bottom of a lot of painful feelings that I'd had from, way back in my life. And just working those out in my journal over and over again. There's something in positive psychology called post-traumatic growth So that's the process of kind of looking back at something traumatic and being able to start to retell the storyline.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean forgetting the trauma or forgiving the trauma. It means starting to shift the way that you look at that past event. And it can't happen, you can't snap your fingers and say, I'm just going to look at that, like I'm going to look on the bright side of that. It's a process. So part of that process is experiencing the deep feelings that you might have had, the pain, the grief, the anger. So that writing helps to put language to all of those emotions, to work through those feelings. And then you start to find yourself telling the story in a different way as you let go of some of the painful feelings. And that for me is, the key to getting to the other side of an addiction.
I listen, when you talk about post-traumatic growth, that to me really hits home. For the longest time, I carried this bag of rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I carried it with me and almost, I didn't allow people to see that. But for me, the evolution or the growth that came from those bad experiences,
Mm-hmm.
really profound. Today,
Yeah.
when I wake up, I say, you are still an untreated alcoholic. What are you going to do to ensure that you stay clean and sober? And so
Yeah.
even today, like my biggest fear in life was, my son one day coming to terms or being told that his father is a former alcoholic and addict. Today, we've had multiple conversations, he and I,
Yeah.
where
Mm-hmm.
I've literally, because of that, I've had to literally push through the pain, but the freedom that I've been able to witness, capture, live in,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, that's an anxiety driven decision.
Yes.
But today, one that was, necessary. And now it's right in line with that whole post-traumatic growth. Today,
Yes.
he sees what I'm doing and the platform that I'm building. And something that I thought of years ago, like there's no way he's gonna understand. I'm doomed for life. I'm gonna carry this cross for the rest of my life. No,
Yeah.
no. Like I've evolved. I've grown.
Yes.
So I love
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I think what I've come to feel is that, um, first of all, we're human. I mean, addicts are human before they're anything else. And addiction is a disease.
Yeah.
And it is something that we can learn to move beyond. We can never actually control it or be cured of it, but we can learn to live free of a substance. We
Right.
can learn to live free of a behavior that
Mhm.
had held us hostage, and we can live with incredible freedom on the other side of that. And in addition, we can come to appreciate what we learned from the experience. It makes us more, it makes us humble, it makes us compassionate. um, it can just makes us stronger to be on the other side of it.
It's funny. I mean, do you ever sit and think like, I never would have thought that I would be now, coaching, mentoring, building a curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
that's the undercurrent there is the pain that you've lived
Mm-hmm.
through and the disease that, you have to help others. I
Mm-hmm.
never thought I would bring it to light where now I'm leveraging it to include a platform for growth.
Yes, absolutely. And that is the gift that you can give others. That is the gift that you can give others. And it's only because I was able to really experience my own weaknesses, my own pain, that and to the point where I had to sit with it until it was no longer bigger than me. It was something that I could sit side by side with. And then it started to heal within me. And what I took forward is that I can tolerate that in other people. I can be, it's okay for me to be with other people in their pain, you know? And, positive psychology is really about the study of what is good and right in people. It was started by Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania when he grew he grew tired of looking at deficits and looking at what was wrong. And he said, look, the field of psychology for 100 years has been diagnosing and describing what is wrong with people and treating. What if we actually started to look at what is right with people? And the amazing thing that happens when you start to look at what is good and right in people and build off those strengths is you just get more and more, you get more and more strength.
Mhm.
So, you know, there's a nice balance, I think, between what I've done in my own work, which is, you know, the more traditional therapeutic journey, which I think is so important because you have to look at that painful stuff. But then once you've gotten yourself to kind of this place of, you know, you're okay, you know, you're substance free, or, you know, whatever behavior you had, you're kind of,
This is up, self-esteem is, you know, obviously increased.
yeah, you're kind of you're in a better place. And then you can start to look at the positive stuff and start to say, what are my character strengths? You know, that's a big, that's the kind of the language of positive psychology. And there's a really simple free test that you can take to find out your character strengths. And I can give you the website. It's www.v as in Victor, A as in Apple, character, all one word, VIA character.org. And you can go to that, yeah, you can go to that website, take a test that takes no more than 30 minutes for free, and you get a profile of your 24 strengths that are common to all human beings. This is what they did a ton of research, and they looked at ancient cultures, they looked cross-culturally, they looked at, you know, popular culture like graffiti, you know, and they said, what are the common strengths to all people? And they came up with these 24 strengths. And so when you go on the site, it gives you a profile. And then at the very top, those are called your signature strengths. And so you can take those signature strengths and you can start to say, these are the things that make me me. And the more I use them, the better I feel. The more I use them, the better I perform. And so it can be a tool to just take you even further. It's like, I call it the difference of being like in a neutral place to starting to move into a thriving and flourishing place.
Are you seeing with the individuals that you're working with today that this tool is resonating for these folks, especially now,
Yeah.
in the midst of
Yeah.
COVID, the negative environment, people have lost even their sense of identity to a certain degree.
Yeah.
They're not going to their, favorite coffee shop. They're not going out for
Yeah.
dinner. Gyms, for the most part, are closed. Is that something that you're seeing?
Yeah. So, I mean, positive psychology is not a cure all. So if
Sure.
something is, bad things happen, jobs are lost or people get sick, those are real things, and they can't just be, sugar coated into something that's not a hardship. But, they can character strengths, for example, leveraging your character strengths can help you get through hard times. It can make you more resilient. So one of the things that I like to say, based on all the learning that I did, is when you feel better, you function better. And when you function better, you're more resilient. So resilience is about persevering through those hard times. So if you are going through a hard time, having some tools in your toolbox that you reach into and you say, I do have these strengths. These are good things about me. No matter what I did in the past, I have some really wonderful qualities, and I'm going to build on them, and so there's some really important things about character strengths.
And it's funny, whenever I work with an individual who comes to me for help, whether they want to, move past a particular addiction, they want to change a certain behavior, they want to lean into, let's say, self-care at a different level, exercise, or even like the whole cleansing component, which is big for me. We always like that initial consultation includes some of that. What are you good at?
Yeah.
If you're coming to me with all of these negative things, you haven't mentioned one thing that you
Yeah.
do, right? So let's take some of those things and build on them. Because for the longest time, before you came to me, you had been like, these thoughts were like literally simmering in your head. And now that pie is completely baked. Okay.
Yeah.
You've eaten it 3 times over and you now believe these things. I
Right.
often tell people, thoughts become things, careful
Yes.
what you think. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah.
Right. And the power of your thoughts is, I mean, positive psychology really comes out of the tradition of cognitive psychology. And it's way back, 100 years ago, there were psychologists saying that, our thoughts determine our actions and our actions determine the outcome of events. So we better be looking very carefully at our thoughts. So, in positive psychology, like to your point, one of the important things to do is to find things that are engaging for you in your life. Things that when I say engaging, I mean things that capture your attention, things that capture your interest, the kind of thing that you can actually forget everything else going on around you when you are doing that one thing. It might be music, it might be art, it could be fixing things. Whatever it is for you, find it. Because when you stay in that engaged place, you are just activating all this good stuff in your body and your mind. You're creating positive emotion when you come away from what you did and you think, wow, that was really a great experience. And
Sure.
all of that stuff, it's like putting in the good fuel into your body and, not putting that bad fuel that maybe you'd spent so many years, whatever that substance or behavior was, just, polluting yourself all those years.
When you look at the current state and somebody says, hey, Carolyn, because you're already considered the expert, right? Or one of them. Give me some.
A
What's that?
a fellow human who's learned a couple things about myself.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, you know things. What are some things that you suggest? Maybe like a 1, 2, 3, right? We're in an environment now where people give me a list, give me the three process. How do I get to at least a little bit of what you have? I want what you have. What are maybe 3 things to consider? Just to maybe get a flair for that.
Yeah, well, I'm reminded of Dr. Seligman again from University of Pennsylvania when we were first in the throes of COVID, and we had a meeting as an alumni association, and he was speaking to us, and because we're all saying, what do we do with positive psychology in this environment right now? I mean, how do you face off a pandemic? What are we supposed to do here, right? And his first recommendation was relationships. So, connection with other people. There's something really powerful that happens between people when we are there for one another.
Okay.
So finding people who can support you on your journey, and that means you might have to actually ask for that help, which is so hard. I mean, it's the thing. I think when people are facing down an addiction, maybe at the when they're hitting their bottom, so to speak, that first step is asking for help, right? It's making yourself vulnerable enough to say, I cannot do this by myself. And finding somebody who's on the other side that's like, hey, I'm going to be here for you. And it might be somebody who's going through the same experience and you're like, let's do this together. That's, I think, the beauty of the 12-step program is that peer support. So important. So finding somebody that either is in a better place than you that's going to help bring you along, or finding somebody who's also doing the same thing you're doing and you can be a good friend to one another. So powerful.
When I've suffered with drug and alcohol addiction for about 25 years.
Yeah.
And throughout that time, I had to raise my hand and scream, I need help.
Yeah.
While I was asking for help, I thought it was one of the more embarrassing moments of my life.
Right.
Today I say, what a courageous moment that was.
Yes. Yes.
Like when you say, hey, I'm losing. If I continue losing, I will die.
Yes.
Not continue to go down this rabbit hole. No,
right.
For me, it was a life and death issue.
Yeah.
And today, there's light there, right? Going back to your point around meaningful relationships, and I get asked this all the time. Well, what's different for you this time? Now that I've been in recovery for a number of years, and for me, it's all about relationships.
Yes.
Relationships today mean something.
Oh,
I
yeah.
return calls. Sometimes they're not a 20-minute conversation like they were in the past, but guess what? When I had a 20-minute conversation, they were filled with fluff.
Yeah.
I was the
Yeah.
master manipulator. I knew I gained the system for many years. Today, I literally apologize up front. I don't have a lot of time, but I just want you to know that, hey, I love you. I'm sorry. I wish I had more time. I want you to know that I'm okay. How are you doing? I make it quick, but it is a meaningful conversation.
Yes.
That to me builds lasting connection.
Yes.
Communicate all day long.
Right.
Communicate, blah, blah, but the ability to connect is completely different.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
there's some amazing work that comes out of positive psychology called something called high quality connections. I
mm,
believe it was by a scholar named Jane Dutton, although I might be misquoting that. But high quality connections are when you actually really make a meaningful connection with somebody. You're there. You heard what they said. You
mhm,
didn't just gloss over it. You didn't just say, oh, well, that happened to me and this is what I did. You don't turn it back into something about you. You
mhm,
don't, change the subject. You don't, just say, oh, that's nice. You actually hear what that person is saying, and maybe ask them more questions.
mhm.
You want to be right in that moment with that person and say, I want to experience this with you. And that can be for good or bad. In fact, in the positive psychology research, it's actually used when people are telling something that happened that was good. And
Mhm.
this I think can be incredibly valuable when you're in the early days of your recovery, because it's hard, right? I mean, you're hurting. Not only were you hurting at the end of your days using your substance or what have you, now that's been taken away and you're hurting because you don't have it, but you're also hurting because like everything that you were numbing out is now flooding into your life.
You got to
And so
sit with
like
it.
you really need to grasp on to those moments of, this is something positive. So you might, for example, take a memory that was positive. Maybe it was like a really great baseball game, or a really fun concert, or just a fun holiday you spent with some people you cared about, and talk about it in detail with someone. And especially if that somebody is a good listener, they help you to like build on it and get all the juicy details. And just activating all that good emotion is really healing to the body. So I think the important thing to think of, because I'm thinking right now that there's probably some people listening who are in the early days of recovery, and who it's really hanging in the balance. It's like, is this worth it? Is the pain worth it? And to just say, yes, it is worth it. And those positive emotions, when you can grasp onto them, are going to help heal your body. And there's all kinds of other ways that we can start to learn to heal ourselves naturally. So there is so much hope. So providing hope for people, I think, is another example of how positive psychology
You know,
can help in this way.
keyword hope. That
Yeah.
that for me was literally all I wanted. I had lost my sense of being, and I
Mm-hmm.
had so the word hope, it just makes me feel good whenever I hear it again.
Yeah.
Um, we're gonna pivot a little bit
Yeah.
and talk about, like, your struggle or your relationship
Yeah.
unhealthy.
Yeah.
You and I are different.
Right.
We're similar, but we're different. Identify myself as an addict and an alcoholic in recovery.
Yeah.
Um, I think more and more as I'm building this platform and I'm talking to individuals with similar yet different approaches, or a lens that's different for identifying or feeling this disease. I'm hearing more and more people that identify with it just like you do.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. That way, our listeners can get a feel for it.
Yeah. So I think the big distinction that we've talked about when we've had our early conversations is that I don't identify and label myself as an alcoholic on a daily basis. I don't kind of wake up affirming that so that I can live my new life kind of thing. I
Mhm.
said, I look at it as like, it was a very painful, dark place that I was in for, especially in the last days that were very, it was painful, dark, and I needed help. But
Mhm.
now that I'm in a better place, I think of myself as well.
Mhm.
So I look at it on the positive side that I'm moving into more health, that I'm practicing wellness. And so those are the things that I like to think about myself. It doesn't mean that I deny that I have that disease, because I know it runs in my family.
Sure.
It's been with me most of my life, actually. Most of my adult life, I've had a troubled relationship with alcohol. I was just in like a kind of like a place where I was kind of in control of it. I was grappling with it and I was kind of winning. I kind of had the upper hand for a long time, but then I didn't. you know
When
so
you're sleeping, when you're sleeping, that disease is doing push-ups. Just
yeah,
before it catches up to you.
that's a good analogy. I've never heard that one. Yeah, I mean, it's a progressive disease, so it tends to get the better of you until you say enough.
Mhm.
So, my journey was one where I was really fortunate in that there was never an incident or an accident or a moment or confrontation where, others were saying enough is enough, you need to get help. I myself was just in a place where I knew I was going down a very dark path. And it was ruining my health. It was starting to compromise the way that I was functioning. And even in the moment, I thought my relationships were all fine. Now that I'm further down the road away from that, I see how much richer, how much fuller, how much healthier my relationships are now.
Yeah, it's funny. Like when you're in active addiction or in active alcoholism, you think I'm only hurting myself.
Yeah,
You have no idea. You have no idea
right,
the
right,
ripple effect of your behavior and how it
right,
impacts those that love you. It's
right.
more than just that.
Well, it consumes a lot of your attention, it consumes a lot of your energy, and by virtue, it numbs out your entire body, your nervous system, all of the things that we need. A really good functioning brain and a really good functioning nervous system are required to have, meaningful relationships with people. So, if we're compromising those, assets in our body and mind, then, we're not going to be at our best for other people.
Do you remember the day that you asked for help?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
That day? Do you mind sharing a little bit of it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, again, I had been trying to, I would say, cut back. I had been trying to cut back and control my drinking for a while. I had read some books. I was doing all of this on my own. And I finally realized it was getting worse, not better. And I decided I would call a doctor. I wanted a psychiatrist because I thought maybe there were some chemical imbalances. I really needed somebody who could fully diagnose what was going on for me. And so I saw the doctor, and in the interview, of course, the issue of substance use came up, and I said, "Oh, well, I can't really talk about that. I don't want to talk about that." And he was very accepting of that in that moment. I mean, think recognizing where I was, um, and I went away from that appointment, and I kind of struggled. I had another appointment set up the 2 weeks later, and in that time, I was trying to deal with things on my own. Finally, I had had such a bad day. Alcohol had won the day before. I went to my second appointment and I walked in and I just said, I can't do this by myself.
Excellent.
I'm tired. I'm tired of living this alone. I'm tired of it. It is a lie that you're presenting to the world that you're fine when you're not. And I was very, very tired of that lie. So,
It's funny. You always say, "How are you doing?" "I'm fine. This is
yeah.
not a problem." And then you take a look back at your life over the last year,
Yeah.
days, a week, and you see the carnage.
Yes.
Say, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I literally had to be like extracted from the house that I was in
Mm-hmm.
because I literally was very sick.
Yeah.
And today, and the reason why I said excellent is
Yeah.
because today in that tragedy,
Yeah.
because of that tragedy,
Yeah.
I'm able to be here. I'm
Yes.
able to this dialogue. I'm able to.
Yeah.
I
Y-
wouldn't have said that years ago. I say that today because
Yeah.
I had to trade the life that I had for the life that I have.
Yet you have to leave it at the door.
Totally.
Yeah, and you just learn from scratch. You learn from the ground up. Nothing is a given anymore, and it was scary. And I think, one of the things that I kept thinking about, all the things I want to talk to you about today, and one of them was this idea, again, relationships. So it could be, a sponsor in AA, it could be a therapist, but just that idea of somebody that you are accountable to. When you're doing that in the very beginning, it's like having somebody that like expects you to stay sober or clean or free of your behavior. They're waiting to hear from you, and most of all, they are compassionate, so they have high expectations, but they understand how hard it is.
Excellent.
And I don't think, I know I couldn't have done it without that. That for me, it was my therapist who had those high expectations. And I mean, if I had said, look, I don't want to do this anymore, he would have said, see you later. Well, guess that was that. But because I stayed committed, he was, if you're committed, I'm committed. You know what I mean? So
Right.
you got to make the commitment to the other person too, right? And
Yep.
show them that you're going to do whatever it takes, right? And then there's something that's created in that relationship that's powerful, where it's like, then when you're down, that person's going to help you.
When I was the last time that I was in treatment, I literally made a decision, and I
Yeah.
didn't communicate that decision. I said, you've made this decision before.
Yeah.
Guess what? You haven't, kind of followed it through.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was important to make the decision internally, me,
Yeah.
myself, up here between the ears, and then make the commitment.
Yeah.
One is the decision to do it,
Yeah.
and two, commit to it. Like
Yeah.
I've never committed to anything before.
Right. Right.
Because as I've shared in this conversation, it was a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
You're committed to living.
Yeah.
You follow this plan. And for me, I have
Yeah.
a history of complicating the simple.
Yeah.
I really do. I sometimes try to intellectualize things. I try to say, well, it can't be that easy. Well, guess what? If you have community like you're sharing right now,
Yeah.
you have a chance
Yeah.
because you're in this alone.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I felt like, poor me. I'm unique. Well,
Yeah.
Tony, sorry to break it to you. And you're not important. So,
Yeah.
you know, so anyway,
Well, it's an interesting thing, I think, Tony, of both recognizing that you're so not unique and that you're just like another human being with all your failings, but also recognizing that you are unique. You're the only person like you. So it's this weird thing. It's just like being humbled and being proud at the same time, and it only develops in that darkest moment where you just got broken, and then you have to build it back up from scratch. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm weak in a way that I never wanted to admit.
mhm.
And you kind of live with that for a little while, and then you start to say, but I'm like nobody else in the way that I see the world and what I have to give to the world. And that's, I think, when you really start to get traction in your recovery, and you start to say, what am I here for on the planet? I actually have things that were given to me, whether you think about it as like, God given, or just, your assets that you were born with, those are yours. And then plus you have this experience, this life experience that goes very deep. It makes you a very deep person to look at yourself that closely and have to change that dramatically. And then I think it can give you a real sense of meaning and purpose, which, by the way, is one of the things that they talk about is so important to well-being and positive psychology. Having meaning and purpose is fundamental to well-being. So there's nothing like a really hard won recovery to give you some meaning.
Two things. One is, we're about to launch our first offering, and in that offering is looking at, finding, and it's really tailored to the environment that we're living in right now. I think, going back to what we talked about earlier, this sense of purpose that a lot of people have lost, right?
Yeah.
A sense of direction. And for me, when I was in treatment, I literally had, way pre-COVID, but I had no sense of purpose. I had no sense of direction. And so I said, what are 4 categories that for me are important that help me reestablish that credibility within myself? Forget anybody else.
Yeah.
And it was like aligned to like that positive mindset, because despite me being an addict and being really like chaotic and having, I always was positive. But positive mindset. 2 is self-care. 3 is that cleansing component, and 4 is exercise. We talk about this, finding your purpose, and I'm saddened, really saddened when I see this country right now and people, and you see relapse rates through the roof because of that. People aren't able to go to their meetings in their normal. They're not able to have that sense of community, that sense of purpose. So I can relate to what you're saying. One of the things that I want you to touch on that you should me that I think is different between me and you is your ability to journal. And I think it's been really therapeutic for you. Talk to me a little bit about your journal that you're going to publish.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully push and prod you to publish that, because I think the impact that it can have on a lot of people, I think, is profound. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So, for me, the most incredible thing happened when I stopped drinking. I needed some place somewhere to bring all of the stuff that was going on all in my head and in my body, because alcohol completely numbs your mind and body, right? That's why we like it, actually, is that it shuts down all the painful stuff, right? Gives us a sense that we're well, but actually we're really not. But so when the alcohol basically left my body, my brain and my body turned on, and I had lots of emotions, I had lots of memories, I had lots of different thoughts that I was thinking about myself, and writing became an incredibly important thing for me to do. Almost every day I would journal, and I would just write about like whatever was on my mind. I was writing a lot about what I was talking in therapy. I was writing the conversations that I was having with my therapist. And then something funny happened about 4 or 5 months in. I started writing poetry.
Great.
I'd never written poetry since I was a teenager. Here I am.
Oh, you're being yourself. There's another God-given talent.
Yeah. And it was really fun how it happened, because I would listen to songs. I started running. I'd always been exercising, but running became really important to me. And so I'd be listening to my songs as I was running, and something would catch my attention in a song or a lyric. And then I'd go back and I'd kind of morph the lyrics to fit what I was feeling. And so I have a lot of poems that are kind of spun off of songs that I was listening to. I also have poems that I just wrote from scratch, from my own head, that kind of came to me. And between my journaling and my poems, I had quite I had several journals worth of writing, which I took this winter, and I kind of boiled down into a pretty short book, which I'm now kind of in the process of figuring out, whether and how I publish it and how much editing it needs and things like that. But, it's a funny thing, because it's like, this was a journal and it was very personal to me at the time. Why would I publish it? Well, there's something that's strange about when you really get to the core of your experience, something that feels so deep and true, something strange happens and you want to share it. I guess that it's like an art form in a way. So it's kind of wanting to share an art, both because it's just something you created, and it's like you birthed it because it was very painful. It's like really hard writing. But then also it's like, do you think anybody else out there feels like this? And it's like, you want to reach out into humanity and see if anybody can relate in the same way, and touch, that you could just make that contact with people. So I think if I do go forward, that's why I would publish it. Yeah.
Excellent. For me, like, I call it the coming out party, where
Yeah.
a lot of people knew my struggles, but now I've literally been very vocal in
Yeah.
social and just in the community.
Yeah.
Not a day goes by, Carolyn, that I don't have multiple DMs, emails, text messages
Oh,
saying,
nice.
thank you. Like,
Yeah.
my struggle, and here's like what I'm trying to do is really broaden the category for recovery,
Yes.
right? Whether it's
Yes.
a hurt, a hang up, drugs and alcohol, of course, whether it's, a 30-year addiction to nicotine,
Yes.
codependency, all of these things. And it's about building a framework for letting that go,
Yeah.
right? And some can do it more effectively than others.
Yeah.
I can only share my experience and how that helped me.
Yeah.
The what I get, and I always say this, and this is this is a little bit of a cliche, but in order for me to keep what I have, I got to give it away,
I
right?
love that.
And for me, it's about giving and sharing my experience, strength, and hope.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, going back to what we said, if you feel a little bit better than your worst day,
Yeah.
there is a chance for you to recuperate.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this whole premise around, like, this health component, this life component, but recovery. We're one degree of separation from somebody or someone,
Yeah.
either yourself or somebody that has a hurt, hang up, or an addiction. And
Yes.
this platform is tailor-made for them.
Yeah, a hurt, hang up, or addiction. I think that pretty much covers the human race. So I think you pretty much got it.
Exactly. And there's
Yeah.
like everybody's like, oh, give me like the explanation for altered state. For me, altered state is literally the state of existence for me right now. Because you and
Yeah.
I, typically, we think of an altered state as an out of body experience. They're drunk, they're high, they're not being themselves. Well,
Yeah.
for me, for this guy, the fact that I'm in recovery, that I'm aligned to a positive mindset, I love myself, I love to cleanse and eat good food, and I love to exercise. Like,
Yeah.
now my frequency is elevated.
Yes, indeed. Yeah,
So,
it's like you're alive.
so great.
It's like you came back to
Okay.
life. Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's a fantastic thing. I completely agree. And as you were talking, I just couldn't help but think about that. I haven't talked about yoga and the importance of yoga in my life. And what I've gotten out of that, I went and got my yoga teacher certification just at the end of this winter before COVID really hit. And, I mean, there's so much to learn from the wisdom of yoga from centuries, from millennia at this point. But I think that, some of the truths that, I feel like I'm discovering on a daily basis have been known, I think since the beginning of time, but I'm just waking up to them. But things like physical activity and that sense of vitality that you just described are all things that you get when you don't have substances in your body, when you are eating well, sleeping, and most important, well, not most importantly, but definitely essentially moving. So this movement of our body is so important. And then we get into the breath work and how breath can be your friend. So I really encourage anybody who is on their own recovery journey to just, do some looking into there's a great new book out right now. I wish I could think of the name. It's in a blog that I just posted, but about the importance of breathing, all the science that we have. Breathing can heal you physically, but it can also improve your mental health. So it's really a powerful friend for those of us recovering.
It's funny. I talk about the relationship that I have with Carolyn Biondi, and I just say, God, this is right now. It's Genesis, right? It's just starting. Not every conversation I take, a couple of nuggets, and I say, God, it's so great. I need to align at a deeper level with Carolyn. So,
Yeah.
as we kind of close out,
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit of like the more positive trends, or like what's hot right now in the world of positive psychology, and some of
Yeah.
the newest trends that you can share with our listeners.
Sure. There's a great new book out on hope.
Mm,
So if you want to look up Dan Tomasulo's book on learned hopefulness, that's a
okay.
really great one for this time. I mean, so many things in our world right now we could not even have seen coming 6 months ago, and here we are grappling with all kinds of painful social issues, and learned hopefulness, I think, can be our friend. It's the idea that when negative emotions get the best of us, hope can be activated by virtue of having those negative emotions. It's like seeing the glimmer, seeing the sun break through the clouds. And in the book, he gives a whole kind of hierarchy of steps of how we get to this hopeful place. So for
But
those of you,
that person in the midst of, conflict, are you
yeah.
activating that thought process?
Uh, well, it's almost like you're laying the soil. You're getting the soil ready for hope to be activated. So all that muck is actually going to grow your lotus, as they say in yoga, right?
Wow.
so, so hopefulness is a big topic. I love the idea of post-traumatic growth. So I'm going to be doing some more looking into that. Things positive emotion, it's not exactly like it's probably Barbara Fredrickson wrote a book called Positivity. Think back in the 2000s, somewhere in the 2000s, that I reread because we read it for school. Such powerful stuff, that this idea that when we feel good, we function better. So how do we help ourselves feel good all day? I
Mhm.
would definitely, especially for those of us who have spent a lot of time not feeling very well, like feeling really bad, actually, reading about positive emotion and how you bring that into your life, I think is a really powerful thing. So I would definitely recommend that as well.
Carolyn, saying thank you would be a disservice. I am grateful. So thankful for this level of engagement. I'm not gonna lie, I'm smarter today because of you. We will continue having you on the show.
Oh my
Not
gosh, I love that.
it'll be for sure. And so just so grateful for everything that you've shared. And so a huge virtual hug.
Yes, Tony, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure that we'll talk very soon.
It's been my pleasure, Tony. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.